The reality is this is what Donald Trump has trafficked in for many, many years, and quite frankly, successfully. I was at Trump Tower when he came down the escalator and announced in horrific language about immigrants in 2015, in the race for 2016. This is the same thing. He garners attention. I remember we all said after that, boy, he doesn't have a shot in heck of the nomination, let alone winning. And there he went. So this has been a winning strategy for him. He is using it. President Biden is right. There is no place for it. And yet here we are. So it is up to the American public and voters to say there's no place for it, because as long as he is successful in these races, he continues to do this.
But Maura, if it was a winning strategy in the past, does that automatically make it a winning strategy now, especially when he was seen as having lost the debate by most Americans who watched it against Kamala Harris? Is this really what he needs to be pushing right now?
No, and I think that what you're seeing is, again, he's only playing to the MAGA base. He's not playing to win. He's not playing to reach people who are in the middle and maybe still undecided. This is not going to sway them to vote for Donald Trump. He's coming across largely on Tuesday night as unhinged. And when you're faced with a decision about who to put in the Oval Office, it's not just about that person, but who they're going to put around him. And so for many people who have said, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago and things of that nature? Well, when you think about those first few years during the Trump presidency, maybe you do feel like your life was better then. It was pre-COVID, so maybe you do feel like your life was better then. But I also would caution people to remember who was around him at that time. And largely most of those people who were in his cabinet or in his orbit have neither, left, were fired because they told him no, and he then replaced them with yes men, or are out there saying that he should not be anywhere near the White House. So I think, to only play to one portion of the Republican Party, and especially in such an extreme manner, is not an effective strategy for someone who would actually have wanted to win the White House. It's not helpful to down ballot races either.
You think about these families and the impact, the real impact that it's having in Springfield. As Kaylee mentioned, Jeanne, the Springfield City School District closed a middle school, Roosevelt Middle School, and evacuated another Perrin Woods and Snow Hill Elementary School as well this morning after they got bomb threats via email. Cliff Park High School outside of that district was also evacuated. They're now working with the Dayton FBI office to find the source of this stuff. There is a very clear and real example here of what the rhetoric can lead to, right?
There absolutely is. And this is the danger of this. It takes one person to react to this kind of obviously, clearly false statements and stories, to spread that disinformation. And this is why leadership matters, because leaders like Donald Trump have to be responsible and to lead us in a more positive direction. He is not doing that by spreading this information. That is clear. But the reality for Donald Trump is he's seen it be successful in the past. He believes it will be. And as long as he continues to believe that, he is not going to stop. And this is where, to Maura's point, we need other leaders on the Republican side to stand up and say enough is enough. We've seen that from Liz Cheney. We've seen that from Dick Cheney. We've seen it from Mike Pence. We've got to see it from others, including former President George W. Bush, who took a hands-off approach. They have to stand up and say, we aren't going to countenance this anymore. That's the only way. In addition to Donald Trump losing another election, and the Republicans may get tired of that if it happens.
I would point out, Jeanne and Maura, for our audience here on Bloomberg TV and radio, that Donald Trump right now is giving remarks to the press in Los Angeles, California. He's opened them by saying he's here in California with a simple message for the American people. We cannot allow Comrade Kamala Harris and the communist left to do to America what they did to California. As we consider the messaging we're getting from the former president, Maura, he also has weighed in on the happenings here in Washington in recent days, suggesting that House Republicans, who of course are trying to avert a government shutdown 18 days from now when funding expires, should indeed shut the government down if they don't get election security through along with it. The SAFE Act, of course, what we're referring to here, making illegal something that already is illegal, non-citizens voting. Do you believe this Donald Trump, who is speaking right now, actually wants to see the government shut down as he is trying to win election?
Again, I think it proves my point that he doesn't actually want to win, because everyone in Washington and otherwise would know that a shutdown right before an election is political suicide, quite frankly. It's not something that anyone wants to do. They are down to a matter of weeks before that happens. And to take this stance and take this position of, get everything you want or don't do anything at all is not how Congress works. I mean, again, and it shows the downside of having somebody in politics as the leader of the Republican Party who doesn't actually understand how it works. And I think that that's a detriment to what Mike Johnson is trying to accomplish and other leaders on Capitol Hill who are trying to make something work that they can get through to avoid this situation that both sides know would not fare well for them politically, but in the polls, but also come Election Day.
Well, Maura, you worked for a speaker long enough to have a better sense of how this stuff works than most people behind the scenes in the House. You don't really think the government shuts down, do you?
No, because they're not going to want to risk that potential. Because again, yes, the most of the focus of the media and American people are focused on these two choices, Kamala Harris or Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. But for Congress, what they're really focused on is, okay, we need to get things done and then go home to our districts and tell them why they should reelect us. And it's really important because Mike Johnson wants to grow his majority, which is very, very, very thin. And Senate Republicans feel as though they have a chance at flipping the Senate. So if they want to accomplish those goals, they actually have to show that they've gotten something done. And, this week they've been focusing on China, but no one's really talking about it. And that's because all the oxygen in the room is constantly being taken by Donald Trump. Not to mention the fundraising dollars are also being taken by Donald Trump. So really Republicans down ballot have to separate themselves from the former president because he's hurting them in so many ways, from messaging, from fundraising, and just getting things accomplished to actually come out with a victory in November in just a matter of weeks. Yeah.
I want to mention one Republican, the senator from North Carolina, Thom Tillis, just out with a post on X about someone who is seemingly getting closer to Donald Trump, has been traveling with him, in fact, this week. Laura Loomer. He calls her a crazy conspiracy theorist who regularly utters disgusting garbage intended to divide Republicans. A DNC plant couldn't do a better job than she is doing to hurt President Trump's chances of winning re-election. Enough, Senator Tillis says. Jeanne, of course, even Marjorie Taylor Greene has had some words for Miss Loomer this week. Is that actually having this effect, Donald Trump being surrounded with people like her?
I don't think it takes Donald Trump being surrounded by other people for him to act the way he's acting. He purposely chooses to have her in his orbit. Tillis's statement is 100% right. But this gets back to what you were just talking about with Maura. Donald Trump is not concerned about the Republican Party or the nation. As Kamala Harris said, he's concerned about himself and his future. This is a man facing jail time right after this election. He needs to win. Why is he willing to have the government shut down in terms of pushing this need for a SAVE Act? Because he wants to set the groundwork that the election was unfair. If he does lose, then he is going to do the same thing he has done after every election, particularly 2020, and say the election was stolen. So he's setting the groundwork. So I don't think it takes Laura Loomer to do that, but Thom Tillis is right. Mm-hmm. It is not a good look for the campaign.